I think all our participants, resource persons have joined us. We welcome them all, and thank you all for joining us. I'll ask the session host to begin.
Recording in progress.
Because we have to start right on time. So, and I'll request Phunchok to begin the session. Thank you all for joining.
A very warm welcome and good morning to all our distinguished panel of speakers, respected colleagues, dear students, and all our participants. On behalf of the Gandhi Study Circle, Kalandi College, University of Delhi, I, Phunchok Dolker, teaching economics in Kalandi College, University of Delhi, would like to welcome you all to the working session 1 for the 2 days International E-Conference in collaboration with Indian Council for Cultural Relations, organized by the Gandhi Study Circle, Kalandi College, University of Delhi, on revisiting Gandhian perspective on development, reflections on culture, society, and politics. It's a great honor and privilege on my part to host our working session 1 with the theme of reimagining the concept of development, a framework for building local self-reliance. It emphasizes a paradigm shift from the traditional notion of development, which gravitates towards building a new model for development based on self-reliance and localization, a revolutionary perspective from the conventional view that being more relevant than ever in today's times. Gandhi was attracted to the idea of minimalism and was an advocate for self-reliance. He believed in the ethos of equality of work and did not want machines to take over human labor, and emphasized on economic empowerment for all. A classic example of this in contemporary times of self is the Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India, which in other words is Swadeshi economics as termed by Gandhi himself. It emphasizes on strengthening its own domestic industry by streamlining the governance system. To commence our session, we are very honored to have Shri A. Annamalai, Director, National Gandhi Museum, New Delhi, today with us, who has kindly agreed to chair the working session 1 of this August gathering. Sir, we are extremely fortunate and grateful for your presence. Shri A. Annamalai is the Director of National Gandhi Museum, New Delhi, and has obtained his MPhil in Gandhian thought and peacemaking. He is also the Vice Chairman and an holding trustee Mendel at Gandhi Smarak Smiti, which is based in New Delhi. He is the Treasurer of Thakar Bapa Vidyalaya, which was founded by Mahatma Gandhi in 1933. He is also the Director of Gandhi Study Center at Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Apart from these titles, he has been avid member of many cultural and non-cultural committees like the Managing Committee at Gandhi Ashram, the governing body of Gandhi Museum in Madurai, and the Tamil Nadu Gandhi Smarak Smiti. He has been instrumental in promoting the Gandhian message among the younger generation. Gandhi Study Circle, Kalandi College was also fortunate to organize student outreach program on Gandhi's heritage under his guidance in January 2021. I request the participants to kindly refer to the chat box for the detailed bio brief of today's distinguished chair and speakers. Now I welcome Shri A. Annamalai to reflect on the conference and share his view on Gandhi.
Thank you. And very good morning to everybody. I'm audible?
You are.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, I should thank Dr. Sangeeta ma'am for non-violently persuading me to attend this important session. I requested her to relieve me because of my very, very important meeting at Gandhi Museum, Madurai. But she said, no, even we can shift the session, but we can't leave you. So that non-violent pressure worked on me. And now today with all, I am with you all And I know the Gandhi Study Center of Kalindi College, one of the very active centers in Delhi University. We are fortunate to have a joint program with the students of Kalindi College, especially members of the Gandhi Study Center. So I should thank for providing me this wonderful opportunity to share my views on the concept of Gandhian concept of development. And I also, I don't know what are the other panel members are there, but my pranam to everybody. First of all, I should also say I am partly chairing this session because I have to leave at 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock I have a meeting. Therefore, kindly excuse me for this absence in chairing the full session. I would like to be, but I can't. That's why excuse me for my inability. And today we are talking about development. Even developed countries talking about their own development. And what is that mean according to Gandhi? They spoke local self-reliance. What according to Gandhi? His idea of village Swaraj is totally different from the concept of today's self-reliance or Swadeshi. I quote Gandhi, my idea of village Swaraj is that it is a complete republic, independent of its neighbors for its wants, but at the same time, yet interdependent for many others, in which dependence is a necessity. Thus, every village's first concern will be grow its own food crops, cotton for its own cloth. It should have a reserve for its cattle, recreation, playground for adults and children. So he has a wide range of imagination about a self-reliant village. And a compulsory up to the final basics. And all the water bodies should be owned by the village and the state government, neither the state government or not the central government control the water bodies. So it should be under the control of the local bodies. And naturally, people think in a natural village environment, there will be a caste-ridden society. So there may be an untouchability. But according to him, there should not be any caste discrimination and there should not be any untouchability. The government of the village will be conducted by the panchayat and Gram Sabha, where all the people represents the Gram Sabha, the members of the Gram Sabha. Therefore, Mahatma Gandhi has given us the design, a unique design for village Swaraj. For him, the village is soul of India. He himself declared that he is a farmer and a weaver. He dreamt of an India consist of village republics. Gandhi wanted a strong India, not from the top, but from the bottom. This subaltern approach of Gandhi made his onto this last as the central philosophy of his Gram Swaraj and Sarvodaya. Gandhi strongly believed that the Panchayat system in India, if it works on scientific line, can build up the social and economic strength of the villages and enhances the power of the forces of national defense against any invasion by foreign countries. If you ask anybody, and I also met many students, and I asked if you are the major or the general of an enemy country, if you want to destroy the whole economy of India and you have buy 5 bombs, where you will drop all the 5 bombs. And they will clearly tell all the 5 places. That itself shows how strategically we are very weak. If all our republics are self-reliant and self-contained, and how many bombs the enemy needs to destroy our economy. Therefore, our economy, if we want a strong economy, it should be a decentralized economic structure. That is the design he proposed. Our ultimate aim is to attain the happiness. Happiness is our aim. We are running from pillar to post to earn more money by all means, because we think money will give happiness. We strongly believe that money will do everything and will bring happiness to our life. But in the process of earning the money, normally what happens? The first casualty is our happiness. We must understand the happiness is the state of mind, and more money cannot bring peace of mind. In fact, it destroys the inner peace. It rather produces more and more anxiety. According to Gandhi, man's happiness really lies in contentment. He who is discontent, however much he possesses, becomes a slave to his desires. Therefore, we have to content in our approach, in our wants. Here lies in the ethics of resource use. Need but not greed. Comfort but not luxury. Because our natural resources are very, very limited. With the limited resources, unlimited growth is not at all possible. If you go on disturbing the natural balance of the earth, then the earth will react. Today in Delhi, we are also watching every day. The alarming trend now in all over India is the increasing farmers' unrest. The agricultural activity is no longer economic, and farmers are in the debt trap. The increasing cost of production of the agricultural inputs, volatile market, unpredictable weather, too much dependence on technology and machines are some of the reasons for their failure to repay their debts, and they are now in the trap. They want to have governmental support instead of private player for their assured income for their product. Therefore, the resource sustainability should be designed for the agricultural production through traditional techniques, the conventional methods. The increasing usage of farmyard manures, the organic farming, locally available and produced organic stuff for growing crops, using our local materials, local technology, and human resources. So for example, Khadi, I am not in favor of replicating the same thing, but at that time, the technology used in the developed countries is milk. And to oppose the same mill-made cloth, he introduced chakka. That is also a technology, from cotton to a thread. But it is a very, very traditional technology, and you can use that technology with your own resources. And the technology is completely under his own control. This is the model. Therefore, Gandhi has given the great technology to the people. Because of the technology, the people get empowered. Therefore, when we talk about technology, that technology should be appropriate and it should grow from the local invention. With this sustainable model, we can create employment opportunities. It's not necessarily through Charka, but with our own traditional methods. If most of the economic transactions done within the villages and between villages, the money in circulation enhances the income of the villages. That will also increase the purchasing power of the people. The money will not go to the town. Instead, it circulates within this local area. And as the professor who introduced me also talked about missionary. There is a very wrong misconception that Gandhi is against the missionary. But his concept, you have to understand with his own concept. Gandhi is not against the missionary or modernizing the technology. But the missionary or technology should be appropriate to our social and economic environment. It should not control the humanity. It should not replace our huge labor force. It should be environmental friendly. Ultimately, it should bring the changes in the living standard of the common people. Rural economy and agro-based industries should be developed and strengthened. This is what Gandhi wanted. But we are totally misinterpreting Gandhi as if he is against the modern development. Gandhi's economic philosophy is vibrant, ever widening. It is not techno-centered. Definitely it is not techno-centered, but people-centered. Development of handful cities cannot solve our economic problems. We are miserably failed in the theory of penetration. It will not penetrate. It is stuck somewhere. The richer has become richest and the poorer become the poorest. That is what we are seeing even today. Therefore, Gandhi concentrated on economic development of the rural sector. Instead of mass production, he suggested production by masses. Instead of centralized industries, he suggested a decentralized small-scale industries. Mass production is only concentrated with the product, whereas the production by the masses is concerned with production as well as distribution. He had a dream of an ideal village. And again, the mass production attracts the people, mostly the village rural people, attracts towards the urban sector, which leads people leave their villages, their land, their crafts, and go to work in the factory. And in the room, when I was in Delhi first time, I was shocked. The people, it is our capital city. It is the pride of our India. But you go through the cities, you are all the students of Delhi. You can go through the streets of Delhi. And how many people are sleeping on the streets without even using their own blanket. This is the situation. This is the development. This is the development we are want for. Therefore, we have to stop the migration from the rural sector. Why they are migrating? What is the attractive points? And Abdul, our former president of India, he suggested that providing urban facilities in the rural areas. That is, again, it is disastrous. The technology should be developed within. Therefore, we have to develop an indigenous development model. The true, Gandhi said, the true India is to be found not in few cities, but in its 700,000 villages. If the villages perish, India will perish too. Each village should be a microcosm of India, a web of loosely interconnected communities. Gandhi considered these villages so important that he thought they should be given the status of village republic. The environmental concern of today was not there at the time of Gandhi, but his perception and attitude on growth, development, technology, self-reliance, Gram Swaraj, etc., disclose his development model. His development model takes care of the planet Earth as a whole. His concern for living in tune with the nature will solve most of our today's problem. Therefore, the traditional knowledge system, which evolved over thousands of years in the challenging environments in developing indigenous science and technology. We had our own science and technology. But our science and technology should be evolved from our own traditional indigenous system. That should be preserved. And we should encourage the people to use a lot. Before, what are the challenges before us now? As Gandhi himself said in his book, Village Swaraj, I know that the work of shaping the ideal village is as difficult as to make of India an ideal country. But if one can produce one ideal village, he will provide a pattern not only for the whole country, but perhaps for the whole world. And recently we have concluded our Gram Swaraj Yatra, and we are also experimenting our own village republics with the self-contained economy, producing all the material which are needed for the village society in a village near Chennai. Therefore, there are experiments are going on, and people should also encourage such experiments, and they should participate. And now the UGC also suggested that colleges and educational institutions should also be part of the development process, development experiments in the villages. So it is the right time for us to discuss all these issues and involve all our students practically with the development process going on in and around our own places in the villages. And I am very so happy that Kalindi College has taken up this subject to discuss with various experts, and I hope many experts will highlight and enlighten us on this particular topic and particular subject. And I once again thank Sangeeta ma'am for providing me this wonderful opportunity to be with you all and share Gandhi's views on the local self-governance. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I mean, we are all enlightened by whatever you had to say, because you are a practitioner and you've been, very, very active in popularizing Gandhi as a global icon, not only abroad, but also among the younger generation. I would like to ask Phunchok to continue the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Phunchok? I think we'll move ahead with our session. I would now like to request Dr. Pradeep. He has joined us at a very short notice. I'm really thankful to you, Dr. Pradeep. And we can begin with our presentations. Dr. Pradeep, please please unmute yourself and switch on your video. And yeah. Yes.
Good morning, Sangeeta.
Yes.
I was under the impression that I'm the discussant in this discussion series, right?
Yes. Yes.
So should
Yes.
I really wait till the other presenters present?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, I wanted to just, introduce you to the rest of the the esteemed speakers. So we'll begin with our first presentation today with Professor Imtiaz Ahmed. Sir, are you, sir, I think will be showing his own PPT.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Phunchok, are you there? I think we've lost connect, sir. Sir, your detailed bio brief is in the chat box, which the audience will be going through, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sangeeta. Respected chair, my panels, good to see Pradeep once again. And good morning to all of you. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my views on Gandhi. And I would be talking, I have some 18 to 19 slides. I'll go through very quickly to give a sense of how the tradition can be reconstructed, and we'll try to make Gandhi of the future rather than of the past. That's the idea. So the focus will be more on reconstruction of tradition.
You are muted,
Sir, you've muted yourself.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
no?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, sorry for that. So mainly to talk about the tradition that we had, and very quickly, let me start one after another. Okay. What we have when it comes to indigenous political traditions, there are abundance of theories. And basically, I want to focus on the issue of abundance, trying to, make a sense of where we ought to focus and how Gandhi's politics would matter. Now, when it comes to tradition, one can go back and just very quickly, because of the time, I will be focusing on two or three, but there are X number of traditions, indigenous traditions, which would, be part of what Gandhi's politics is all about. Well, the big one is the Ashokan tradition, or the Ashokan politics. And then you also have the heterodox Bauls, the Baulian tradition, predominantly in Bengal, but one can bring, with the Bauls, you can also bring the Sufi tradition and other similar traditions that would match what Gandhi's understanding of politics was all about. And of course, Gandhi's politics itself. Now, if you look at the indigenous tradition, the focus was on the human, and very much centered on each and every person, and more importantly. Yes, we talk about the community of the village, but it's the person which I think was a key thing, and there are reasons for that, and to which I will come in a short while. And the other thing that you have, the commonality, is that they all attracted millions of people, whether the Ashokan politics or the Bauls, and of course Gandhi, they attracted millions of people. Now, when you look at the Ashokan politics, the way he transformed Digvijay to Dhamma Vijay. And of course, after the Kalinga War, we'll tell you, what Ashoka really wanted to do out of his understanding of a statehood or the politics that he was trying to work during his time. Now, the interesting part of the Ashokan politics is it quickly attracted a lot of followers. And you can see the stretch of the Ashokan kingdom, not to mention it made a big impression in some of the places of the world. But then, unfortunately, in some of the areas, it did not, the expectation that was there got lost out. Sri Lanka probably would be an interesting case where you have a strong Ashokan politics, and Pradeep probably would be able to tell more on this. But then, the very birth of Theravada Buddhism and the kind of, politics, the contemporary politics that we see with the conflict between the majority and the minority tells you whatever the aspiration of the Ashokan politics was did not materialize. And I'll try to point out why that was the case. You have the hyper-tolerance of the heterodox Bauls. The Bauls, they tried their best to combine, the major religions that he had before him, whether it's Hinduism or Islam or Buddhism, and including, from Hinduism. Again, can you hear me?
दूसरे को भी एक वीडियो को भी अनम्यूट.
Sorry. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry. So from Hinduism, you have the Hindu Vaishnavism, in Islam, from Sufi Islam, and then from Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism. And he tried to, and the Bauls tried to combine all these three. And we have an extraordinary person, Lalun, to give the sense of what the Baulian tradition was all about. Now, if you look at the Baulian tradition, where they wanted to get rid of the caste and the hierarchy, the majority minority, they tried to deconstruct whatever that was there in the mainstream politics. So it's really an anti-politics politics. And to the point that they, left the cities and, went for an exile, if we can say. They gave up on the whole, the development discourse that was there, and tried to form a community among themselves and live happily ever after. So you have an interesting tradition, whether the Ashokan and the Baulian, and then I come to Gandhi's politics. Now, Gandhi, one can easily see, really goes back to the kind of tradition that we are talking about, and takes a key from the Upanishadic saying that Akashat Vipraho Bahuda Vedanto, that which exists is one, sages call it by various names. And by that, what he wanted to do was to create a kind of a structure where you accommodate the contrary forces by keeping both means and end identical, the Upai and the Upyo. And this was quite fascinating, particular time when he did. Keep in mind that it was a colonial times, and of course, also he saw fascism coming up in the name of modernity. So the reason, if the objective is non-violent, the means ought to be non-violent as well, because if the means become violent, then it will reproduce end. And that's the mistake I think the modern state has done, to the point, the case whether of Sri Lanka or other countries which got infected with the Ashokan tradition, somehow could not reproduce the non-violence or the peace that was supposed to come from such a practice. So the means and end has to be identical. Now, the reason of Gandhi's politics, if you want to understand, we cannot understand without the forces that he was trying to fight or contain. And this is very important. And the forces that he wanted to fight was, of course, the modern state and nationalism. And there I talk about limits of nationalism from 3 standpoints. This is the politics of singularity in the name of race and nation. And the best example would be Hitler and Mussolini, and the kind of state that they created in the name of modernity. Don't forget, both of them got elected in one way or other. And you have a structure by which a lot of critics would now say really contributed to the birth of fascism. So the extension of modernity from modernity to fascism is not that long. So if you go for a politics of singularity, if you say that my nation is the best, or my religion is the best, or my food is the best, or my race is the best, then you end up reproducing Hitler and Mussolini. And this is a very secular one. They were not religious person at all. So you have one limitations of nationalism coming from the secular side, particularly if you reproduce the politics of singularity. But then you also have limits of nationalism from the point of view of religion. And this particular image will tell you whether it doesn't matter in Islam or in Hinduism and Buddhism, even in Christianity and Judaism. They have all, as you can see the picture, they've all fallen into the politics of singularity, saying my one is the best. And that is where I think Gandhi comes, trying to argue against singularity. And finally, you come to the third limits of nationalism, is that you reproduce silos. And you feel comfortable for a time, but when something of pandemic comes, and COVID-19 pandemic is a good example, you can easily see the silos don't work. That can really kill a lot of people. So one aspect of understanding Gandhi's politics, you can't minus the whole nationalist discourse, the modernity, the rise of fascism. Similarly, Gandhi, with all the politics that he tried, somehow it came to certain limits, and I think partition would be a good example. Somehow the accommodation of country forces could not stop the genocidal partition of British India. And he was very sad, to the point that he did not raise the flag in his ashram on the day of independence. I'm sure you are all familiar with that. So where does it, where do we end up with all this? So my contention here is that we have good theories, but the practice is bad. But if indigenous politics, and I would definitely include, including Gandhi's politics, if they have all floundered, in one way, and I remember the chair was also alluding to that, with a lot of frustrations in practice over the centuries. The question is, what prospect does South Asia have in reconstructing the tradition in the future? If we could not do what he said, then what should be done, if that's the question? Well, the answer, as I see, probably lies in locating the common elements in indigenous politics. The tradition that I was referring to, the Ashokan, the Baulian, and the Gandhian tradition. If you look into indigenous politics, then there are two common elements. One is the theory of abundance, and the second one is empowering the person. Now, the first one is easy to understand. It's a big population that we have throughout South Asia, 1.5 billion plus, and this is important because somehow abundance is not something that we are comfortable, and a lot of disciplines I think also are responsible. One of the important disciplines that we have is economics, which looks into theory of scarcity. And moment we talk about scarcity, we also have issues. We have psychological issues, because humans can't deal together when it comes to scarcity. This is important. Now, the important part is somehow we need to focus on the population as much as we can. And that means each and every person. So one is the theory of abundance that we have to get into. The second one is empowering the person. And here we have a fascinating, coming out of that tradition that I was referring to, is the Tagore Einstein debate. Now, Tagore and Einstein, both Nobel laureates back then in 1930, one physicist and other is a poet and a mystic poet. They sat together to discuss a very simple question. And the question was, can beauty, truth, or table, by implication the moon, exist without human beings? Tagore came with an emphatic no. No human beings, no beauty, no truth, not even the table. Einstein understood beauty very quickly, because we really don't know how dogs and cows, when they look at the Taj Mahal, whether they will say beautiful or just say hamba or something. That he understood very quickly. But he paused on the question of truth. Tagore came out answering that without human beings, you cannot realize truth. Only human beings, through human beings, truth is realized. So the center point is, if you don't have human beings, you don't have even the table. And there's an interesting debate between, some of you, I'm sure, familiar with this particular debate, to the point that he said that, look, even the table that you see would not remain a table if there were no human beings, because we don't know how a cat or a mosquito looks at the table. The table remains a table because there are human beings. Now, this brings us to the question, okay, what is to be done? If we have an indigenous politics, which is a remarkable tradition, yes, it floundered in history, could not make, whether it's Sri Lanka or the genocidal partition that I was referring to, and the context in which Gandhi's politics came about, the colonialism and fascism and modernity is important. Now, the point here is what is to be done. And here, my question is, we need to go back to this abundance and on the person. This is very important because each and every person is important. And I remember the chair was referring to technology. Now there, and I agree with him that he was not anti-technology at all. And if you read his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, he pointed out that, look, this Chorka is also a technology. And the idea that he was flagging was that each and every person must have access to the technology. The moment some people have access and others don't, then you have a serious problem. And the point that he was making was that we are homo technologicus, we are technological beings. Without technology, we can't move, whether it's glass we wear, of course, the laptop, the pen, everything is technology. And humans are the only beings who produce technologies. No other beings produces technologies. So he was not being anti-technology. The point he was making was that this Chorka, and he was saying that a wise man will understand that this Chorka is not just an instrument made piece of wood, but instrument that can give employment to all, full stop. This employment to all is critical. So the very idea that he was focusing was each and every person. That's the central element. And that is where I think we made mistakes in history in trying to reproduce Gandhi's politics, because either we put him in an economic development or sometimes in a political development or sometimes this or that. But if you go through the books, well, number of 80 volumes, if you have time, you will see that he covered almost everything, because according to him, everything is connected to everything. You can't dissect that. So, and that's precisely the reason that even in religion, he had all the books that he wanted to, give a sense that you need to read all the books in order to understand your own religion. Now, I have the last two slides and then I'll stop. Now, in order to get a sense of how do you use the person, one has to go back to, again, the tradition. And the tradition that I'm referring to is the Indian dialectics or the South Asian dialectics, which is Prasangika. We can translate that as theory of contemporariness. And the very idea of mandala will give you a sense. A lot of people, would use this idea of mandala, or will refer to as circle of state, is actually circle of space. So when people say of enemy is my friend, it's not the state. Even Chanakya Kautila, who was also using Prasangika and Indian dialectics, there was no statehood as we see today. So this circle of space is important, where one circle, is surrounded by another circle and goes on and on and on. Now, this Prasangika is important when it comes to abundance and reproducing the person. And this is the last slide I have, which will give you a sense. This is where we have, historically, I think, first of all, it's not the empowering of the person that we were referring to community and other and state, but it was the empowering of the person that Gandhi was referring to. And what I think he succeeded in many ways to give a sense to his politics on the first two circles, particularly the political and the economic. Well, the political in a very big way, no doubt. He was critical when it comes to 1947, getting rid of the British. But some discourses on economics is also there. But I think what he was trying to say is, you need to empower the person politically, you need to empower each and every person economically, each and every person socially, culturally, technologically, even psychologically. And that means each and every person. Now, those who are, the Bengalis in the platform would know Tagore's famous song, Amra Shobai Raja, Amader Raja Rajotte. We are all kings in this kingdom of kings. If we are not kings, then how could we meet another king? That's the idea. So Amra Shobai Raja, Amader Raja Rajotte, that we are all kings. That's the platform of the indigenous tradition to which Gandhi was trying to reproduce, that each and every person must be empowered, and empowered in all respect. But somehow we focus one on the other. We focus maybe on politics with election and democracy, but not on, of course, definitely not on economics and social and culture. And the circles can be extended, and you can bring other circles as well. So the idea of abundance and empowering the person is critical when it comes to reconstructing the tradition and reproducing Gandhi's politics for the future. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your intellectual insights. Thank you, sir, for your intellectual insights and deliberation on Gandhian philosophy. It was certainly a refreshing outlook on Gandhi's politics. I would like to convey my apologies for the inconvenience caused due to the technical glitches, and would like to resume our session now. I would like to thank Professor Imtiaz Ahmed again, and would like to speak a bit elaborately on his. Professor Imtiaz Ahmed is Professor of International Relations and Director, Center for Genocide Studies at University of Dhaka. He is also currently visiting professor at Secy University, Beirut. Professor Ahmed is the recipient of various awards and honors. He has authored, co-authored, or edited 33 books and 9 monographs. More than 120 research papers and scholarly articles have been published in leading journals and chapters in edited volumes. I would also like to thank our discussant, Dr. Pradeep Paris, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. Sir, we all are extremely grateful to you for agreeing to be our discussant for this conference on such a short notice. I would also kindly like to request our participants to put out their questions in the chat box. We will be taking the questions at the end of the session for discussion. Moving forward, next we have Dr. Biswajeet Banerjee, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, New Delhi, with his paper title, Modern Development Planning in Rural India, Strengthening the Idea of Gram Swaraj. Dr. Biswajeet Banerjee is the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, and has pursued Masters of Public Administration, Maxwell School, Syracuse University, New York, USA. He also served as Director of Planning Commission in the Government of India, New Delhi. Due to some unavoidable circumstances, Dr. Biswajeet Banerjee has offered his apologies for not being able to be a part of our session today. Hence, he won't be able to present his paper live. He has sent his message, which I'm going to be sharing with us all, and will be presenting the abstract for his paper titled Modern Development Planning in Rural India, Strengthening the Idea of Gram Swaraj. Dr. Biswajeet Banerjee conveys his message as follows. At the outset, I would like to appreciate the effort made by the Gandhi Study Circle, Kalandi College, for organizing 2 days international e-conference in collaboration with ICCR. I also profusely thank conference coordinator Dr. Sangeeta Dhal for her indomitable attitude and dedication which brought us together and the privilege to participate. I welcome all the participants and express my sincere gratitude. I'm extremely sorry for being unable to join live on account of some urgent official schedule. I would like to share my few thoughts with our all esteemed participants on the topic, the title of research paper, Modern Development Planning in Rural India, Strengthening the Ideas of Gram Swaraj. India lives on her villages. More than 68% of the population of the country is living in villages today. More than $108.9 billion is invested annually under different flagship schemes in the development of rural India. These investments need to be made based on sound development planning. The mandate of such planning is vested with the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, embracing the principle of Gram Swaraj. The ministry endeavors to institutionalize and strengthen the Gram Swaraj through preparation of Gram Panchayat development plans and building the capacity of Panchayat Raj institution across all the 3 levels of development planning at village, block, and district level. Devolution of grant funds under 15th Finance Commission for the above purpose for the first time has been done to all the levels of PRI for decentralization and empowering the villages in the line of Gram Swaraj. Gram Panchayats have been mandated for the preparation of Gram Panchayat development plan for economic development and social justice. Panchayats have a significant role to play in the effective and efficient implementation of flagship schemes on subjects of national importance for transformation of rural India. The GPDP planning process has to be comprehensive and based on participatory process, which involves full convergence with schemes of all related central ministries, departments related to 29 subjects listed in the 11th schedule of the Constitution. The Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, PMGSY, one of the biggest initiatives of connecting villages with all-weather roads, draws upon the model of decentralized network planning for rural roads. Comprehensive new connectivity priority list and comprehensive upgradation priority list are used for planning the road construction. The CNCPL and CUPL planning exercises is carried out with the full involvement of the 3-tier Panchayati Raj institution. as well as honorable members of legislative assemblies and parliament. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, one of the biggest pro-poor schemes in the world, is a demand-driven wage employment program which provides for enhancement of livelihood security of the households in the rural areas of the country by providing at least 100 days of guaranteed wage employment in every financial year to every household whose adult member volunteers to do unskilled manual work. Manregas is a scheme which bottom-up planning and the work are identified, approved, and prioritized by the Gram Sabha at the Gram Panchayat level. The vision of Shama Prasad Mukherjee urban mission, which can be considered as second stage of rural development, essentially develops a cluster of villages that preserve and nurtures essence of rural community life with focus on equity and inclusiveness without compromising the facilities perceived to be essentially urban in nature. The mission aims at holistic development of a cluster by providing basic social, economic, and digital amenities with active participation of Gram Panchayats. Urban cluster is a cluster of geographical contiguous villages with a population of about 25,000 to 50,000 in plain and coastal areas, and with a population of 5,000 to 15,000 in deserts, hilly, or tribal areas. The mission aims at preparation of spatial villages, cluster plans, embracing the scientific incorporation of spatial and temporal dimension of planning domain by the people and Gram Panchayat for sustainability and environmentally benign development, which are fully compliant to SDGs. Central tendency of all such developmental planning is to strengthen the Gram Swaraj with modern scientific underpinnings and to capacitate local units being governed by the people for the people. Recently, the country has also embarked upon digitally supported such development planning through institutionalizing public interface with open data source. Few of such examples are eGram Swaraj of Ministry of Panchayati Raj, Shama Prasad Mukherjee Rural Spatial Program, a digital public interface, etc. We are thankful to Dr. Banerjee for sharing his message with us and for the insightful paper he has shared with us. His comprehensive analysis towards overall strengthening of the villages can be practicable by intervention with policies and schemes, which he has explained in his paper. Now, not least of all, I would like to give a warm welcome to our third speaker for today's session, Shri Charudutt Panigrahi, President FIDR Bhubaneswar, Odisha, who is going to be presenting his paper on the title Revisiting Technology of Sustainable Development, a Gandhian Perspective. Shri Charudutt is a public intellectual and an author. An alumnus of top-ranking B School, he is engaged in community work in India. He has built institutions in India and the USA. FIDR, a think tank which he founded, has completed 20 years recently. A TED speaker, Charudutt is a leading public policy expert across a range of areas, such as livelihoods, entrepreneurship, indigenous community development, natural resources management, technology, and climate change. Now, I invite Shri Charudutt to deliver his lecture.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Phunchok. Thanks to Kalindi College. Thanks to ICCR. Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta Dhal, to have conceived, along with your team, of such a wonderful think tank, I would say, of people from various sectors, from various walks of life to share their thoughts, experiences, and their observations on Gandhian perspectives on various aspects. Thank you so much. And before I begin, there are a few ground rules, and I'd like all of you to walk along with me on these ground rules. One, simplify. I would desist myself from talking in jargons or using jargons as much as possible. Second, this is also a call to action because Mahatma always believed in action. So when we leave this 2-day talk and 2-day platform, we should be taking our learnings back to our daily lives, and we should be acting on each one of them. And that would be our biggest tribute to Mahatma on this Amrit Mahotsav. And this is essentially Amrit Mahotsav, and I am so thankful to the government of India and all the governments, state governments, to have thought of this as a platform for celebration and observation of the Mahatma's thoughts and action, because this is, I believe, the right time to do so. And why I'm saying this is because as we are speaking this morning, IDA is devastating the biggest economy, the most developed economy of the world. While it is doing so, another developed economy is criticizing net zero goal. And now, while all this is happening, Greece, Spain, Algeria, India, parts of India are all going through havoc. Some countries are burning, some countries are deluged, some countries are melting, poles are melting. So we are besieged by this pushback from nature. And why has this happened? This has happened because somehow we believe that we should colonize nature, or we have colonized nature without even thinking about it, or without even the consciousness that's required for all of us to understand who we are, where are we, what are we supposed to do, and what are we supposed to leave behind. Isn't this sustainability? Isn't this what we are talking about? Sustainable growth or the sustainable development goals. So we have set ourselves a few goals, X number of goals, Y number of indicators, when say that we'll use what we want to use, what we need to use, more importantly, and leave behind for the next generations. Now, if we don't leave behind for the next generations, are we looking at the end? Is this what Anthropocene means? Don't we have any responsibility? Mahatma was trying to instill this minimal basic responsibilities in all of us. And when we say revisiting technology for sustainable development, a Gandhian perspective, I'll try to take you on a journey where we would like to understand what Mahatma meant by all this. What Mahatma meant by saying that technology is important for us, but go beyond technology. Think about yourself. What Mahatma thought about controlling oneself, how self is important, how the interior is important, how the inner is important. So when we talk about all this, I remember, and I know that my family has been closely associated with the Mahatma during the independence struggle, even during his presence, his August presence in the 1932 and 34 Roundtable Conference in London. And I am practicing development activities in different parts of the country at the last mile. So I would also trying to bring in the learnings that I have got with the help of my team, where we work at the last mile, at the last household, at the last life to understand where are the gaps. What did Mahatma mean? Excuse me? I think we should all mute. So what is this technology for sustainable development needs? What are the needs? Are we meeting our needs or are we getting greedy? Now, with all this, when we visit the Mahatma's philosophy, we know that about 8 decades ago, almost about a century ago, he thought about hackathon. He, in 1929, if I'm not wrong, he had asked for college students to contribute, chip in with ideas to make lightweight charkha, spinning wheel. And in 1925, he had once addressed students in Tiruvananthapuram, where he very categorically mentioned that we cannot, quote unquote, we cannot live without science. However, science is accountable. There is a very simple theory behind this. He probably knew science the best because he could transcend science, he could question science, he could see the impact of science. Where are we today after all these scientific developments? Where are we today when microbes attacked us? We are under the constant attack of microbes, of animal to human transmission of microbes, of the ecology giving away. Where are we today with all these technological developments? And when we talk about artificial intelligence or machine learning, do we mean to say that we need to have more and more of scientific development, if we call this development, where we are doing all this only to meet our growing greed, our growing requirements? And if you question back, why do you need to have artificial intelligence, more intelligence, or machine created intelligence? Because you need them. Why do you need them? Because you have increased your needs. Why do you have increased your needs? Because you are never satisfied with what you had. Why do you always get dissatisfied with what you have? Because I'm always greedy. Because I always want more and more than what we have. And why do I have that recurrent feeling? I have that recurrent feeling because I'm not satisfied in my inner self. Have I traveled inside? Have you ever done the conservation of energy that goes inside? Where is that inner being? If you break a stone, you get a stone. If you break a stone further, you get a smaller stone. If you break a stone, so the smaller stone further, you get even a smaller stone. Going on breaking the stone, you get to a point where you have an atom or a molecule. But where is that inner thing? It's all about the outer. It's all about the object. Where is the subjectivity? Hence, when Mahatma spoke about self-rule, self-reliance, self-development, he in a way transcended science. He in a way went beyond science, because science is an enabler, not the panacea. Science is what we have created, but unless we create a better we, how do we create a better science? How do we create a science which comes out of us if we ourselves are not up to a particular level, are not up to a standard? Because if we come out with negative forces, we create a science which again gives back negativity. And that's what has been happening. When we talk about circular economy, when we talk about don't take, make, and waste, but reduce, recycle, reuse, what do we mean? We mean to say that we'll have a circular economy where the loop never ends. So we have a control on the waste. Now we take resources, we use them, and we create waste. We don't know how to manage the waste. We don't know how to reduce the emission. We don't know how to face the next COP26, which is going to happen in November. We don't know whether we are going to meet our emission targets by 2030. What are we heading for? Where is this thought? And Mahatma was trying to invoke our thoughts, tried to provoke us, tried to make us look inside. So the unit of development for Mahatma was a rural economy, was we ourselves. So we have to locate that unit which emits the energy back to the society, to the environment, which will create this entire environment of positivity. So from a centripetal, you create a positive centrifugal force. And this is what he told us very simply by observing, by practicing, by living a life which he always spoke about. So when he says in this slide, you would see a quote from the Mahatma. When he says, if India becomes the slave of a machine, then I say, heaven save the world. What does it mean? It means that we have created machines, which I've already mentioned, and we need to know how to get what we actually need, not what we greed for. There is no end to the avarice that we have. And if we have that, it dehumanizes us. It automates our soul, because we are all after everything, we are all living beings. What does a living being mean? A living being means that we have to be careful for our society, which is the social aspect, for economy, which is our sustainability aspect, which is our subsistence aspect, and the environment, which is where we belong. We are nothing without the biodiversity. We are nothing without the forests. We are nothing without the animals. We are nothing without the water. And have we gone so away from all of this that we have forgotten what is minimalism? We now coin minimalism as a separate way of life. It was never a separate way of life for Mahatma. Mahatma believed in minimalism. Mahatma demonstrated that with minimalism, we can attain maximization. With the most minimum, you can be the most evolved. And this is what the Mahatma has been telling us. So when in 1920s, I mean, after his return to India, he thought of technology, he thought of innovation, he thought of supporting sustainable science. He was looking at making sandals from used rubber, used tires. He was thinking of making better snake catching instruments. He was thinking of making better spinning wheels, charkha. He was thinking of making or developing the sanitation system in the villages, in the households. So he was always glued into innovation. He was always glued into science. But there was a difference. His science was talking about no waste. His science was talking about what was available and their usage as per the needs of where it was available. It was not talking of waste. So there was no competition between technology and theology. He wanted to have a balance between the two. He bridged the gap between technology and theology if they existed. And I have heard that from the early advocates of Theosophical Society in India who were involved in setting up the society in India, he was in constant touch with the founders of Theosophical Society, with Dr. Ahmed, and they used to spend lots of time discussing about theology and technology, and the difference or the paradigm shift that was required to marry the objectivity with the subjectivity, because he could see the future. He forewarned us about the misuse of science, or science going beyond our template of life. Now, template of life is very simple. We are looking at not a linear economy, but we are looking at a circular economy. We are looking at how contented we are. Today, we are talking about GDP losing its importance or losing its relevance. We're talking about the gross happiness index. Many countries have already adopted gross happiness index as a measure of development. Why are we talking about that? Have we come to such a pass? Think about it. Have we come to such a pass that we have to now invent ways of keeping ourselves happy? Have we gone so far ahead or away from happiness? Is this what life is all about? Is this why we were created by the Supreme? Is this why we tout ourselves to be the best of species? This is what he always wanted all of us to be aware of. So when he wanted the students to come in with bright ideas, to have a lighter spinning wheel, he actually wanted to have the spinning wheel as a metaphor. I mean, now I see this as a metaphor or the earlier avatar of internet, where you churn, where you make your life easier with churning of available resources. And in fact, I find a correlation between the philosophy of Charka and the possibilities, the evolutionary possibilities of internet. If you see, there is a strong correlation between the two. In fact, whenever I go to the community, I work with the community, I always remind myself, my colleagues, my fellow men, women who all are working with me, my households, my communities, I always remind all of us that did a person like this exist in this world? Did a person like this walked on this earth where you and I live? And if it is true, if it is so great that sometimes we disbelieve, then can we make our lives meaningful? Can we dedicate our lives to his dreams, to his aspirations, to his thoughts, to his prophecies? And that's why I always would try to address him as Mahatma. He was the super soul. And when somebody talks about circular economy a century ago, when somebody talks about conservation a century ago, isn't it something which a super soul is supposed to do? And isn't it something that we as practitioners, as daily practitioners, are required to take a vow, a pledge, that we will take everything that is said back to our lives and work on them every second of our lives? Today we are hearing about Extinction Rebellion. There's this group which is looking at climate change, climate emergency, and working on that. And that's a group which raises the awareness. Do you know they have taken their inspiration from the civil disobedience movement of the Mahatma? So when the whole world is affected, closely affected, influenced, strongly influenced by him, this is the right time to think. And I'm so proud of my country. I'm so proud of my country because as we speak, in spite of all these that's happening around us, the COP15 target of reducing our emission to a particular level has been maintained, or we are working towards it, being the only country in G20. And I'm proud of my country. And I'm also proud because in these 75 years of celebration of our independence, we, all of us, have come together on this beautiful Saturday morning to discuss about Mahatma, to discuss about his life, about his thoughts, about his beliefs. And he always thought, look at his symbols. Everything about him was so simple. You can draw him in 2 lines, on 3 lines. You can understand him by being as simple as possible. The more simplified you are, the better you understand. There is no gobbledygook, there is no complicated thinking, there is no complicated way of life to understand him. There are no jargons used. Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed. Is it so difficult to understand that? That our forest cover is reducing every year, that the sea levels are rising, that all our land is used for development, concrete development, which is pushing us back to the fringes. Is it so difficult to understand that in the villages, at the last unit or the last mile of our structures, we are still struggling to have micro enterprises. We are still struggling to organize our self-help groups to productive workforces. Our women are so progressive across the country, whether it's northeast, south, west, east. We work everywhere. I'm aware of them. I'm aware of their brilliant thinking, of their brilliant life. They need more support from us. They need more technology from us. Now, when I'm saying technology, I don't refer to the technology that's usually used when we talk about the Mahatma and his interface with technology, which is often thought to be somewhere between the industrialization and the non-industrialization and the fight between the two, or the competition between the two. It was not meant to be that. His idea of science was sustainable science. His idea of life was sustainable life. He always wanted all of us. He still wants all of us, because I think he's not gone. He's very much always there with all of us. He wanted us to live our life. He wanted us to live life for others, live and let live. So when we say live life for others, we mean that we have to leave enough for the next generations to continue on this beautiful planet. So when we are talking about the technology for sustainable development, we're talking about a development which gives back life, doesn't take lives.
Hello, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would humbly request you to conclude. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your analysis of how to attain a sustainable approach towards development and how Gandhian perspective is still relevant in curating such a shift in our view of development and inculcating the idea of self and self-reliance in that approach. The emphasis you took upon how modern day machines and technology should be a mere means at attaining prosperity, and the aspect of sustainable development and concept of happiness must pertain while moving forward. Next, I would like to take upon the questions asked in the chat box. Sir, first, I would like to read out the question.
Phunchok, sorry for interruption. I think you can invite the discussant now, and then after that we will take up the question.
Okay. So I would like to invite our discussant, Dr. Pradeep, for his final remarks on the conference.
Thank you so much. I hope you all can hear me. Right. I must thank Professor Sangeeta for inviting me. It's so nice to see you, Sangeeta, today. And also nice to meet our old friend, Professor Imtiaz, once again. I must say that I come from a country where we didn't have someone like Gandhi. So we went through a different trajectory. So our life experience somewhat different to, I think, most of rest of the main South Asia subcontinent of the South Asia. So my intervention is basically from our experience, and I being a political scientist, so you have to pardon me, like, for my insensitivity sometimes, like, with regard to the depth in terms of, like, you've been discussing here. So what I felt today by listening to these discussions, I mean, two presentations, three presentations, what I felt is, like, both Professor Imtiaz and also, like, Dr. Panigri's presentation, I found that I was listening to those two discussions with so much interest. I felt like I was listening to some sort of, like, secular religious sermon, like, it's very deep, and you have taken us to a kind of very much of a philosophical, basis of reimagining the development or reimagining of a future. I think both of you all really, like, in two different ways, like, you brought into like the crux of the real issue in what we are experiencing now, like how we have to distance ourselves from the human or the humanness, and we're, like, giving more primacy to, like, other material world, and also, like, I think Dr. Banerjee's presentation was very much to do with the practical side of it. So my intervention is basically to say, like, ask few questions while I was listening to you all. Like, there are certain questions raised in my head, being a political scientist, also, like, being a person who experiences Sri Lankan politics. So I mean, I really like this, like, three main points that I picked up from the three presentation, where Dr. Banerjee was talking about this, like, development, economic development for, like, social justice, right? I think, like, where he gave more primacy to, like, social justice in the development rather than the whole technology and the the fancy outcome of the economic development that, like, most of us now seem to be, like, very attracted now. And also Dr. Panigri's, like, the idea of, like, democracy is sustainability. It's a very strong idea. Like, we tend to now have a very crooked, very warped idea of democracy, and we do not seem to be, like, bothering about, like, the like how sustainable our lives are, our society are, like, in this whole process. So and I really like the way that you brought it up, this whole bringing greed to the center of the human society, the organizing of human society, and completely, like, disregarding the need of human society, right? And also, like, I like the Professor Imtiaz, the social praxis, like, we're accommodating, like, contradictory forces in order to achieve some sort of specific objective. I mean, these are, like, very strong insights for us to reimagine, rethink about our future, our society, and come out of, like, kind of a miseries, and come out of, like, kind of a chaos that we are in right now, even in the midst of the pandemic. The way I would like to, like, bring my experiences this here in this way, like, I just feel like most of these ideas we may have to really, like, put into practice, also preach, also to popularize, also to mobilize within a certain kind of a context. We may not be able to do that within a vacuum, where, because we live in a particular political system, I would call as a kind of the clientelist, patronage-based political system, where the main guiding principle, or the spirit of social contract is, it's a very much of a, like, kind of a transactional, right? So in such a political context, how do you really, like, how do you bring need in and replace the greed with need? Because, like, this political system also part of the larger vicious cycle of neoliberalism. So where what we produce is not what we necessarily need. Basically, we produce need in order to produce goods. So so we Dr. Panigrahi really went into depth, how our society has really gone down. I think it's partially the kind of economic model that we are in. And this is not an economic model of one or two people's choice. This is a larger global economic model. We have really almost purchased into that, right? And also in this whole circle, the other point is the whole the fact that the particular type of politics where we believe in that end justifies means, so where unlike the Professor Imtiaz was talking about, end and means needs to be the same, but we live in a kind of Machiavellian political the philosophy where our main objective of our human politics, our politics is not to have a good life, but rather to have more development, more security, and where we don't mind taking any means in order to achieve some certain objectives. But we neither achieve that more democratic objective, no, we follow a kind of a human friendly justifiable means also. So we are in that process. And how do we really then mobilize this idea? I completely agree with all three of the presentation, because these are basically provides us a fundamental basis for imagining the future. But how do you do that? I mean, the Gandhiji live in a kind of a period where the South Asia was in a transition, and the mobilization is not necessarily on those virtues, but also the mobilization is against the colonial power. So it's the colonial struggle also part of that. So now present day we don't find that. Now, for example, right now we are going through a global pandemic, yet people are rather coming together. People find almost getting into compartmental, Professor Imtiaz showed in those the towers, people were trying to find out their own vaccine, own lifestyle. You want to really vaccinate your own constituency. Now in Sri Lanka, what you right now vaccination and also patronage has been all connected. Development and that particular patronage politics has been connected. So we don't no longer develop the country in order to sustain the economy. We have a debt economy. We basically keep bringing debt from various places to run the economy. So we are in a political, social, economic context where we will find that humongous task in terms of pushing forward or mobilizing this idea. So I mean, I would like to end by saying that yes, I do agree with all these the ideas. I think this is really enlightening. This is really a way forward. But my question to all three panelists, how do you read current politics, and what is the strategy for us to make that change? So with that, I would love to end my brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your thought-provoking and inquisitive address. You perfectly compiled the papers presented by all the speakers and highlighted the need for unification rather than compartmentalization of ourselves and relevance of Gandhian philosophy. Thank you for your concluding remark. Next, I would be taking on the questions as
Phunchok, before you take up the questions, I would use this opportunity to welcome Professor Nizam Ahmed from Chittagong University, Professor Joe from South Korea. I can see them attending the conference, and I wholeheartedly welcome them. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can take up the questions.
Okay. So yes, so I would be taking the questions put in the chat box. Prior to that, I would also like to ask both the speakers to that Pradeep had just put forward, if they want to elaborate.
Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah,
Charudutt.
sure, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Pradeep, that was very inspiring, and thank you so much for your comments and your observation. Answering your question, you had a question, right? Answering your question, let me attempt to give you a kind of a roadmap, or give you a kind of a futuristic estimate, or a futuristic observation of where we are heading to, what's going to happen next, and what's all this after the discussion. If you ask me, the rate at which we are under attack from nature, this is going to change our lives henceforth drastically, which means that we could probably have more work on energy consumption. Let me elaborate on this. What do I mean by energy consumption? You must have recently seen that we are shifting gears to electric automobiles. Now, when we are shifting gears to electric automobiles, we will be investing more on batteries, on energy conservation in a non-polluting manner. That's going to be an industry which should be on the rise, which is already taking its early impetus from the governments and from the civil society. So the way we will be looking at the urban areas or our cities would be very different from now on. For people like you and I and all of us here, who come typically from high density population areas, we would have difficulty in providing shelter, food, and difficulty in reducing poverty because of the migration that's going to happen from the hinterlands to the cities. And that's not going to stop in a while from now. I'm going to the brass tacks. I'm going to the particulars actually. So I'll stop after giving you the third point that's there on my list to tell you about how we see the future. The way we would be using technology and science will, or ideally should be different now. I don't see much happening in the immediate 10 years, but beyond 10 years, ideally they should be different. Now, this online invasion into our lives, I'm calling it invasion because a lot of things are going to change because of this online, online rule of our worlds, online rule of our lives. So what will happen then is the kind of skilling and the kind of preparedness that our youth should be required to have to get into this economy, the gig economy, would be very different. So that will have an impact on human relations, and that has a direct, direct correlation with what we are discussing now and what the Mahatma always spoke about and always laid emphasis on, and that's human relations. Now, if we are looking at these kind of interplay that the technology and science is going to bring into our lives, we will see, hopefully not, but there is a danger of increase in strifes internally. This might not, I'm not indicating always a civil war or a civil strife or large scale wars or conflicts.
Hello, sir. Hello.
But what I'm suggesting is,
sorry to interrupt, sir, but I would humbly request you to kindly brief the answer because we have to wind up the session by 11:15.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, these are the three major trends that I see, Dr. Pradeep. And why I'm saying this is because I'm scared of our own consumption pattern, our consumerism and our consumption. This again has a direct bearing on what you're discussing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to read out one of the questions addressed to Dr. Imtiaz. Sir, the question mentioned here is, can you please elaborate on the connection between tradition and Gandhian ideology?
Thank you very much. Just quickly, quickly on that, we tend to forget that South Asia is a very old civilization, very old. You can go back even 6th century BC and talk about republican form of government. Somehow we have a tendency to believe that the West has given the republican form of government, which is not true. The Lichavi republics were there in Greater Bengal way back in the 6th century BC. The first king of Pal dynasty, Gopal, was also elected. He was an elected Raja. Election was there way back in 6th century, and the Pals ruled Bengal for 400 years, who were Buddhist. But we have forgotten that tradition. We have forgotten that civilization. There is, when we talk about tradition, so whatever Gandhi was trying to do, he was not doing it as one person, because time and again he was referring to the civilization. And that's precisely the reason when a journalist in London asked him, what do you think about Western civilization? And he responded by saying, I think it is a good idea, because for him, Western civilization was just an idea in the making, whereas the civilization that he came from is much, much older. You know, as I said, 6th century BC is when the Europeans were living in caves. But somehow we have forgotten that. And this is, and Pradeep has raised an interesting question, you know, of political system and clientelism. The mind got colonized. If you look at the curriculum, we still teach the history that the colonial powers have taught us. Ancient, medieval, modern. Go to Delhi University, go to Dhaka University, go to Colombo University. History is, even today, the British have left, but the history that is taught is ancient, medieval, and modern, which doesn't make any sense. So when we talk about Gandhian politics per se of the tradition, we need to know that he was part and parcel reproducing the tradition. And we have Ashoka, we have the Bauls, we have the Sufis, and you can give X number of people. And that's besides the reason why he was saying that Tilak did not understand the spirit of Bhagavad Gita, his difference reading of Bhagavad Gita with Tilak. And he said that Tilak took it literally, but it's not the literal meaning which is important. What was going on was something in the author's mind of good and evil. And this is how he saw Bhagavad Gita, where tolerance has to be created with all kinds of doctrines, you know, and it could be the Vedic Brahmanism, Upanishadic monism, Shankar dualism, Yoga Shastra, Bhagavad theism. You have all these things, but you need to tolerate. The moment you tolerate, then I think you have, you have a standing. And this is precisely the reason, what the point that I was trying to make, that yes, it floundered, and it said, oh, Gandhi did not work. The partition got violent, genocidal. That means, he's too idealist. I think we are taking Gandhi in the wrong direction. I think what is important, the message that he had, taking the tradition, was saying that each and every person is important. And the dialogue that he had, the conversation that he had with the American journalist, which is absolutely fascinating. He was telling the American journalist, because the American journalist was saying that, look, India is full of caste, how can you develop India? And he said, no, there is no caste in India. And he argued in a fascinating way, trying to debunk each and every caste. He said the Brahmins have not lived up to their standard. They are no longer intellectuals. They're making money. So we don't have Brahmins. The Kshatriyas were supposed to defend the country, but we are under colonies. So there are no Kshatriyas. So he went on and on. And then the American journalist said, what about, the Shudras? He said, no, there are no Shudras, because the Shudras, yes, they were supposed to do menial jobs, but with the full dignity of a person. This is the line he's saying. Full dignity. There is no dignity of a Shudra. So there are no caste system. So the point that I was trying to make in the tradition is very rich. Now, unless you go and change your curriculum, you change your discourse, you are not going to get the Gandhian politics, I'm afraid. And as I say, it's not Gandhi. You read Tagore, you will find an enormous tradition in Tagore at the same time. So my point would be that if you want to reproduce Gandhi's politics, you need to go back to your own civilization, and they're extraordinary, what you call human beings who have produced. But what I think he was emphasizing is on the abundance. Don't get scared of people. Humans are not only thinking being, we are creative being. But if you have a system where 10 people owns wealth of 40% of the people of the world, that's absolutely, that's, not only sad, that's pathetic. How can you let, or how can anyone let 10 people own wealth of 40% of the people in the world? Why people are not changing that? So it's not the point here of, we are, yes, and I agree with the point, the speaker was making, Mr. Charudutt was making on how we are dealing with nature. But the fact is, look at the division that we have. Look at the rich, the super rich, not even super rich, and then way down. The technology that we have, I just want to finish one line and say, the technology that we humans have now today, we can make the entire Sahara Desert green and the Gobi Desert green. We have the technology. Humans have the technology to do that. But Sahara is not being made green because the money is people with them. They, I don't know what they're going to do, with all that money. No one knows, because you can't take it to the next life. And research has shown that after having $100 million, the rest is useless because you can't use it, on a day-to-day basis. You just need $100 million at the most if you want to have all the planes and in your own lifestyle. So here, I think the point here is the class division, and that's the argument that Gandhi was trying to make, and the way he dressed to empower each and every person. The dress that he made, the technology that he is, unless we empower each and every person and create a system where you don't have 10 people owning 40% of the wealth of the world, then you are not going to go very far. So tradition is very rich. Gandhi's politics is equally important in the journey. Now we have to move forward and reproduce whatever we have in the tradition and whatever Gandhi has put forward in terms of his politics. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the answer. Next, due to the constraint of time constraint, we won't be able to take one more question that was forwarded to Dr. Charudutt. I'm deeply sorry for that. So next, I would like to request all the participants to switch on the video camera for the group photograph. Thank you. Thank you. So with this, now we have come to the end of our first session for today. I would like to invite all the participants to join our second working session today at 11:30 a.m. and also our valedictory session at 6 p.m. today. Details are already on the college website. I now invite Dr. Priyabala Singh, Department of Political Science, Kalindi College, to give out the vote of thanks for this session.
You are muted.
Priya, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Ms. Phunchok. Good morning to everyone. With this very fruitful session on reimagining development, a framework for building local self-reliance, we come to an end of our first working session of two-day international conference. It is an honor indeed to give my vote of thanks for this very insightful and interactive session. The session theme and discussions are timely actually, given not so very positive reverberations and repercussions of the development trajectory that the modern civilization has been driven by are now very visible, alarming, and hard to deal with. As a result, world is grappling with problems in the form of pandemic, climate change, rising inequality, endless consumerism, and relentless materialism. Gandhian style of development have persistently furnished a critique of modern ways of thinking, presented alternative visions of socio-economic development, especially through his concepts of self-reliance, Gram Swaraj, trusteeship, and his emphasis on empowering people. Gandhi's emphasis on minimalism and self-reliance is relevant today to move the world towards a more sustainable, ethical, environment-friendly, and peaceful place to live in. The point is to be creative while implying the ideas that Gandhi propelled, which many of us would consider are too radical in today's complex, interconnected, and globalized economy. But we certainly need to rethink about our model of development and revisit Gandhi's ideas for finding some of our solutions. So, thank you so much for such a wonderful and comprehensive session today. Now, I would extend my thanks to all who made this session so thought-provoking and insightful. First of all, I express my gratitude to the chair of the session, Shri A. Annamalai, Director of National Gandhi Museum, New Delhi, for accepting our invitation and chairing the session. My heartfelt gratitude goes to Dr. Pradeep Paris, a faculty in the Department of Political Science, Colombo University, Sri Lanka, for accepting our invitation at such short notice and agreeing to be the discussant of this session. Thank you for providing such a wonderful discussion, sir. Next, I wholeheartedly thank all the three resource persons, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, Professor of International Relations and Director, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, Dr. Biswajeet Banerjee, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, New Delhi, and Shri Charudutt Panigrahi, President FIDR, Bhubaneswar, Odisha, for their very impactful reflections and deliberations during the course of this very interesting theme. I would also like to thank our session host, Ms. Phunchok Dolker, Assistant Professor in the Department of Economics, for hosting the session so smoothly and efficiently. Thank you, Phunchok. Further, I would extend my gratitude to our principal, Professor Naina Hasija, for her support and encouragement for organizing the conference. Next, I thank the entire organizing team for their continued efforts and hard work throughout the preparatory phase and during this conference. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants and attendees, of course, for attending this session with such great enthusiasm and interest. Thank you. Before we depart, I also want to invite you all to join us for our next session with the theme Art of Living the Gandhi Way. It begins at 11:30 a.m. You may join with the same link. So please do join us for the next session. Thank you so much. See you again in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you. So we take a break for 15 minutes and then rejoin. Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.